Hilarious. That's just really funny. I just started filming this whole video and then it was in slow motion. So I'm gonna put in a little I'll put in a little snippet of that for you to just have a look at, because I genuinely thought I was filming normally, but I wasn't. But I think I'm filming normally now. Hey guys, I'm Kat. Welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me. In this video, we're gonna be talking about... Haha, so funny. Once again, my camera had a series of overheating. Even though it's actually not that hot today and I hadn't been filming for that long, it overheated. But I did a little Google search and it turns out that this camera, the Sony ZV-E10 basic vlogging camera, has that issue, and there is a setting that I have now just changed which allows the camera to get up to a slightly hotter temperature before it breaks out and melts down. And so hopefully we shan't be experiencing this much of issues in this realm anymore, which is so exciting. It's funny how I've been technically doing YouTube for this long and I haven't got to this stage of figuring out that camera setting yet, but we got there now, which is great. So top tip, if you have a Sony ZV-E10 and you plan on doing anything on it, then change your internal temp setting. Apparently it's a common issue. So welcome to today's video. I am Kat. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk through a few things. The first is this beautiful cake that I made this weekend. If you joined me on last video, you heard me hypothesizationaling the cake. I wanted to make a meringue cake because I got a blowtorch last week and I wanted to use the blowtorch, and so therefore meringue. And then I also had cherries, and so needed to use cherries. And so the cake that I made ended up being a chocolate marble chiffon cake with a vanilla cream. Within the vanilla cream layers, there was fresh cherry and a raspberry coulis. And then so 3 layers of cake, 2 layers of the cream and the fruit, and then around that whole thingy-majiggy is a flambéed meringue layer. Oh, so cool. Okay, so this was the interior of my marble chiffon cake, and I have a note about my marble chiffon cake. I will get to that later. Then this is me layering up the cherry and the raspberry coulis and the vanilla cream. So delicious. I used about 800 mils of cream in there. The original recipe called for 1,000 mils, 1 liter of cream. I was like, 1 liter of cream sounds like far too much cream, and so I shall use 800. Thank you very much. And it worked just well. I put cream of tartar in both the cream and also in the meringue layer just to add some stability. And then next we have me layering the whole thing up and it looking beautiful. I put all of that, well, I put a cream layer around the whole cake just to lock in any of the crumbs. Put that into the fridge to chill while I created my meringue. This is my first ever meringue to blowtorch that I've ever made, obviously, because I've never had a blowtorch before. And so this, I thought, was going to be a really difficult process. And I thought it would also be not possible without a stand mixer. Turns out I was wrong on both accounts. It's actually very easy. I followed an Ash Baba recipe, and all you have to do is melt sugar, not even icing sugar, melt granulated sugar, egg whites, bit of salt over a bain-marie. Once the sugar is dissolved, whisk that baby up. I added cream of tartar, like I said. Whisk those babies up, and it just makes beautiful fluffy meringue. And it was such a joy. And then I just slathered that over the entire cake after it was chilled and came out of not the oven, the fridge, the cold room. And genuinely, spreading out that meringue over the cake was one of the most satisfying things I have done in a very long time. And I do a lot of, I think the amount of satisfying things I do is probably slightly above average because I create art and beautiful things. For example, we'll go on to this later, but if you've not seen my filet crochet yet, like, satisfying. I've made this with my hands. Satisfying. And so my day is like generally filled with quite satisfying things, but this was the newest, most satisfying thing that I have done in a very long time, because it was just the perfect glossy texture. It was like I was creating, you know how when there's fresh snowfall and everything is smooth and beautiful and just the colour of just like a blanket of white with these slight undulations and shadows coming through, but it's all still pretty smooth and relaxing to look at. I was just creating that. It felt like how God feels when God is raining snow down. He's like, I'm just going to make it look so beautiful and smooth with these slight undulations. I was like that. And the texture of the meringue was just so gorgeous and silky and luxurious to work with, and yet like still very easily manipulatable, not just like a big like liquid mass that is really difficult because it just plops everywhere, and not like a buttercream where it's so solid sometimes that it's like you're going to pick up everything else as you move along. It was just delightful in so many ways. And then the blowtorching process itself was so sick. I can't even tell you how sick it was. I thought it'd be really scary and intense because you're blowtorching something, of course. But actually, it was really just like more like, well, this now sounds stupid, but it literally is like, but if the that was coming out was hot enough to just like target brulee a marshmallow. It wasn't like a flamethrower like I thought it would be. It was literally a blowtorch. And I think when I've heard blowtorch in my past, it's always been like intense word, blowtorch, but actually now I've reframed what blowtorch actually, I've redefined what blowtorch actually insinuates in my mind. Insinuates what it alludes to in my mind, which is now like a of torch, as opposed to like a Kara torch. So that was great, and this is again the finished cake, and I'm just so proud of her, and she was beautiful. But my note, so this is a video of me cutting the cake open and revealing the intersection of the cake, the cross section of the cake, and I was fine about it. It was like lovely, cool, really tall cake. Wow. But I did the marble cake, and marble cake is beautiful when it's thick on the sides. And so the issue was that I split that chiffon cake into 3 horizontal layers, which means that all of the effect of the marbling is lost by that point, unless you're looking at top down, which you're not because it's a cake and you're stacking everything. And so what would have been better, which I now know in hindsight, is if I had just on a plain block of chocolate cake, so there no marbling, just all the chocolate chiffon cake the whole way through, then you would have had a bit more definition in the layers, whereas with this, it was just kind of all together and didn't look defined and like, wow. And so my notes for Kat for next time I design a cake is I'm capable of doing the outsides, I know that, but I genuinely never considered the cross section until now. And so the next time I am constructing a cake in my mind, in my imagination, I will, yes, think of the architecture of the outside, but I will also be carefully considering the anatomy of the inside of the cake and how to make that boom when you cut it open. So it's like, wow, the whole way through. And then it was also delicious. So now onto the taste. It was beautiful, light, fluffy, because everything was light and fluffy about it. The slight tang of the cherry and the raspberry did come through and cut through that. And it was great because even though the slices would have been so large because the cake is so tall, it was so light that it just almost, if you'd had the whole thing, it would have felt probably like the same as eating a normally looking sized slice of cake, if that makes sense. So yes, that was great. That was for the cake picnic that I hosted with my friends at the weekend. So grateful for just that time. It was so sweet. I got to meet some new people. Some people brought some friends along. I invited some people who I'd never met before as well, and they came, which was great. And everyone contributed, and I was just so grateful. It was such a beautiful mix, great conversations, and lots of love. Okay, moving on. Next topic is the very ambitious filet crochet project that I was deliberating on attempting last video and a half. And it was basically referenced from a filet crochet reference book that I found on the line, and I was like, this is so gorgeous and beautiful. It would be perfect as a potential photo booth background for an event that I foresee coming mid-early next year. And I would love to be able to create this in time. I already knew it was going to be a ginormous project, but I didn't know exactly how ginormous it was going to be. And so it was ginormous to the point where I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I just needed to actually do some mathematics to figure out if it was reasonable and feasible at all. Like if it's even possible, if it's within the realm of possibility, then I would attempt it. And if it was not, then there's no point me attempting it, obviously. And so guys, I did some mathematicos. Exhibit A. This is the mathematicos I did. Let me tell you about the maths that I ended up doing for this, because the whole way through secondary school, the hours of mathematics lessons that I would have gone through, not understanding why I was learning maths, because I viscerally remember asking in school, like, what is the point of this? Why are these equations used? Why am I solving for x? What is the point? And I genuinely don't think I ever got an answer of how algebra is applied to life. And I was like, okay, fine, this is just school. That's just what school is. It's just like testing you for the sake of testing you, not actually preparing you for anything in the future, is what I thought, until I started sewing last year. Well, I've had to use algebra very minutely when I've been doing paintings in the past, but nothing like this. When I started sewing, I actually started having to use algebra, and it was actually quite satisfying. I was like, whoa. First of all, it was difficult because I was like, I don't remember how to do that. But then it was satisfying because I was like, actually, I'm using my brain, I'm using the past, I'm using principles of mathematics to solve my problems and make my life better. And so that was cool. And this is another example of actually using algebra to solve my problems and figure things out and make estimations and plan my life. And I'm like, wow, maths is so useful. But I just didn't know it when I was in school. And I'm like, wow, it would have been so great if I was a dream utopia imaginationing right now, if I was learning mathematics and then also immediately getting to apply them to real world scenarios where the ultimate goal is creating beauty, such as this in a massive filet crochet format as a background for a photo booth for a one-day event. Wouldn't that just be great? Anyways, my reference for how I did the maths, because what I needed to figure out was, can I do this in the amount of time that I have? And if so, how many hours a day of work would I need to put into this in order to have it complete by the date that I have been projecting? And so I have created what they could call a gauge swatch in crochet. And if you're just starting out crochet and you see this term gauge swatch, ignore it, because it's too overwhelming and it's going to make you feel like, oh, crochet is actually boring. It's not fun and free and light and fluffy. It's not. But actually, when you start to want to do crochet for specific purposes, then the gauge swatch becomes important. But I'm not one to just like create something with no function. And so I created this beautiful filet crochet. I'm still working on it. You can see it's still attached to the yarn, but I've been creating this filet crochet tapestry here because it's my first filet crochet piece ever. And I just wanted to get something beautiful done. Everything is white in this shot right now, but do you see how beautiful that is? So I started halfway through this diamond. I've completed one whole diamond, and then I'm going to finish the other half. Then I'll be done with this piece. But this piece is 25 squares across, and then however many times the 25 up it's going right now. But a gauge is basically just where you take a swatch of your filet crochet and measure it, and then you will know how to, what will you know? I don't really understand how to explain this yet, but what I know is that I needed to figure out how many centimeters was taken up by 25 squares of my own hand of filet crochet with this weight of yarn. So what I calculated was that 25 squares by 25 squares is 18 by 18 squares. 18 by 18 centimeters. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to keep going anyways because I'm in it now. And we're not quitting. Okay, so This piece here, no, actually I'm screen recording and I'm going to put myself in the corner instead of putting this in the corner because this is some cool stuff here. Okay, I'm in the corner now, hello. This is the pattern that I created from the original reference image. I had to recreate this entire crochet pattern by myself. It's not like I could just have subbed the reference into this program or into Photoshop and then boom, out came the design. I literally had to like reconstruct the entire original reference. And so we did it in the end, praise God. And I needed to figure out, first of all, how the resolution of this. I could have made it a higher resolution. I could have made it a lower resolution. Obviously, if I made it a lower resolution, which means that there are less squares involved, not only would the detail disappear, but also the piece itself would become smaller. And so there were two things we're trying to balance out here. We're trying to balance resolution, but we're also trying to make the final piece hit a very specific width and height, because for a photo booth you don't want it too big or too small, because too big and the detail will be lost out to the side of the photos that you take, but it's too small and it will just look like a random picture in the background of your whole photo. And so for a photo booth background, the standard size is about 1.5 meters across. And so in order to make my filet crochet piece, crocheting at a gauge of 18 centimeters across for 25 squares, I needed to have basically 200 to 220, 200 to 250 squares across. And so that's basically wait, let me just do a little calculation. I can give you some more accurate numbers. 25 equals 18 centimeters. And so 1 square equals... You know what's so fun is also getting out my scientific calculator from school. I think this is the best colorway of scientific calculator, and you can fight me on it, but I'll win. Okay, 18 divided by 25. Each square is 0.72 centimeters, and I've calculated that by dividing 18 centimeters by 25 squares across. And then, so if I want to get 150 centimeters, which is 1.5 meters for the whole width, then I need to do, figure out what the multiplication factor is. And so I need to do 150 centimeters divided by 0.72 centimeters. And 150 is 208.3 times bigger. And so 150 centimeters is basically 208 squares, because I got down to the 1. So I then changed the resolution of my diagram, of my sketch, of my pattern, to be around 208, 205, 200 squares across. And decided that actually this is a pretty good resolution, where I'm not compromising on too much of detail, and I'm also getting the desired width across. And then basically this is going to be about, it's going to be 1.5 meters across, it's going to be about 2 meters high. This is great lengths and dimensions for a photo booth background. Next, once we're happy with the whole pattern design, we need to figure out how long this is going to take and if it's possible to even do it. And so I then basically did a guesstimation of the amount of time it took me to do this entire piece. Then I divided it by about 3 in order to get just 1 square's 25 by 25's worth, because at that point I'd got to about this whole thing and that had taken me maybe 12 hours. And so I was like, okay, so maybe this initial square, one initial square took me 3.5 hours to do. And so if 25 by 25 squares, which is how many squares? 25 times 25 squares is 625 squares. And that takes me 3.5 hours to complete. Then this piece that I've calculated for here is 208. No, it's 200 and something. This piece, let's go into the corner here. Okay, 206 times by 346 squares, aka it's a lot of squares. 206 times 346 squares. It's 71,276 squares, which is crazy. And so in the same way as we've calculated the previous thing, and if you can see, this is me doing algebra right now. And so I did the initial amount of squares to the initial distance. I got it down to what is one thingy. Then I did the multiplication factor and then got to my final answer here. I'm going to do the same thing here. And so if 625 squares took me 3.5 hours, now we're getting into time, it's quite difficult. I'm hoping this works. 625 squares is 3.5 hours. So 1 hour is 178 squares. No, let's round it down because that's too ambitious. 178 squares. And so how much bigger, this is not looking tidy, but if 625 squares takes me 3.5 hours, then in 1 hour I can do 178 squares. And so what I need to figure out for how much the time the entire project will take is how many times bigger is 71,276 times 178. Yeah, and I don't want to know. But the way we do that is by doing 71,276 divided by 178, which is 400, which means that this project takes 400 hours to complete. 400 hours. And so my calculation at the time, this was last week, I was like, okay, say that there are circa 240 days until this event. How many hours would I need to put in every single day in order for me to finish this in time? And just based on like simple mental mathematics and proportions, I already knew this wasn't looking great. But it would mean 400 divided by 200 and, what did I say, 240 days? Say 240 days, it's not actually that many days. I would need to put in 1.6667 hours every day. So say 1.7 hours a day. And so 1.60 times 0.7 is actually 42 minutes. So I need to put 1 hour, 42 minutes in per day, every single day until the event in order to get this done. That is assuming that I don't make a single mistake, which is not reasonable. And it's also assuming that I don't miss any days, which I've just said. But let's take into account what happens if I miss one day. If I miss one day, I now have to put in over 3 hours in the day. And that's just not, there's no margin for error there. And that is not sensible at all. In every single time that you embark on a new project, you need to leave some margin for error. If my life stayed completely stable in the way that my last week went, for example, I probably could at push put in the 1.7 hours every single day. But that accounts for me taking no days off, no weekends, no breaks, no times when someone might need my help with something, and I need to drop everything in order to go and help that person. Like, it's not a responsible decision to commit to this. And so the very, very sad conclusion was that after all of that work going into this and the vision just being so beautiful and me almost developing an emotional attachment to the outcome of having this as being a photo booth background, I realized that I can't do it. And so that is sad. Insert sad sound effects right now. I know guys, it's heartbreaking, but the good news is that I have many different disciplines that I can apply to accomplish this overall effect. And even though the ultimate optimum coolest looking thing probably would be a filet crochet project, just because it would look so elegant and delicate and lovely, and it just looks like many hours of work and care went into it, and so That's what makes it so wonderful. The reason why a cathedral is so beautiful is not only because it's beautiful, but because you know in your heart how many human hours of dedication that took. And that has eternal value, and it impacts everyone, whether they appreciate this style of art or not. They will be able to appreciate the fact that like heart and soul and time and attention went into it. And so I can't do a filet crochet project because I don't physically have enough time. But what I could do, and what I've been thinking of doing, is that I could instead just paint a tapestry. And that would obviously still have the same image. It's not too complex. I can project this design onto the tapestry and then just paint into all the blocks. And then we still have the overall effect, even though it's not as effective as the filet crochet would be. But the filet crochet would have taken me 400 hours, and I don't have 400 hours. And so that is the conclusion, guys. And also, a side thought, we're closing this chapter now, but what do you think about me publishing this pattern somewhere online for free? Because I was thinking about, I've been obviously starting my filet crochet journey. I'm one project in. And also my top is like an allusion to filet crochet, but it's not. I was looking for cool filet crochet and starter resources and patterns to just copy. And they're either not that cool or they're behind a paywall. Like they're on an Etsy shop and you have to pay like £2.30, £3.42 for it to be unlocked. And I just, if I was my very, very dreamiest, dream kind, generous, abundantly cool creator, would I be creating cool designs, dangling the cool designs in front of your face and then putting them behind a paywall? Or would I be putting them up for free? And the answer is the latter. And so I'm thinking somewhere, as and when I make cool designs like this, because this took a lot of work and I don't want it to just go to waste, because maybe someone out there would see this and they would be like, I actually have 400 hours. I actually have 400 hours spare in the next year of my life. I would love to embark on a project like this where I don't have to do any active creating, thinking. I just get on with it, and at the end of it is something beautiful, impactful. This could be for you. And then any other small ones I make obviously could also be the same thing. So that's what I'm thinking, but I don't know where to put that yet. But it shouldn't be that hard once I figured it out. But watch this space. I'll be praying into that. And so that is a filet crochet update. And I'm sorry, guys, that it means that I can't do the thing that I said I was going to do. Well, I didn't ever say I was going to do it. I said I wanted to do it. And that's still true. Okay, next up on the agenda is a real quick one. So yesterday was Sunday. And so I just had some free creative hours where I was like, I'm not going to do anything that feels like work. I'm going to do something that feels like I'm expanding my creative potential and my skill set, and also ticking a box and scratching an itch that's been itching me for a little while, and that itch is wire bead sculptures. I got some new pliers basically. Let me show you my pliers. So my pliers basically came from Amazon and they're great, and my beads came from Søstrene Grene and they're not that expensive, which is also great. These are my pliers, and I've wanted some of these pliers for so long, and they finally arrived. And so not only last week did I get a blowtorch, but I also got these, and so I feel like I really upgraded in many ways last week. But these are my pliers and they're great. So we've got one wire cutter, we've got one like flat nose plier, and then we've got this round one, which is so handy, and they have so much friction on the actual nibs as well, which is great. And then I would show you my beads, but I'll show you some of the beads because they are fully sealed and they're just so fun. They're just so fun. So these are the beads from Søstrene Grene. And this is the shop I'm talking about, Søstrene Grene. And it's the tiger of creatives. All these beads were 92p, which is crazy. The ones in the little bottles are a bit more expensive. They're £1.90, £1.98 for the vials of beads. But I don't know why, because they're almost not as pretty as these ones. But anyways, they've got so many different colours, and they make a really satisfying noise when you shake them. You get 25 grams worth of beads, which can't even tell you how many beads that approximates to, but as a reference for for beads, this project here has taken me maybe at least one whole thing of these and a half so far, and I'm on my third packet of beads for this project here. So you get a really good amount of surface area out of the beads in here. And to think that this project so far like has only cost me probably under £10 to start. It's so cool. Really, really cool. Maybe with the frames fresh, like 15, 20 pounds, but like for the quality of the art that I'm creating, which is priceless, you know, this is not really an expensive hobby, guys. But anyways, when I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago, my friend was not feeling well, and so she went to go and have a nap while I went to go into a shop that I thought was a supermarket. It wasn't a supermarket, it was actually like a random discount store where they had just loads of like the most random things, home items of various sorts. And then they had a craft section. And in that craft section, it's funny because I went in there looking for sun cream. I came out not with sun cream, but with a new cutting board and metal wire. And since then, I have been dreaming of combining my metal wire with my beads in order to create beaded sculptures. But I just hadn't found the time to start it in the last 2 weeks until yesterday. And so this is the beautiful little flower that I made as my first ever beaded wire project. It's not like the most incredible thing in the world, but it is still beautiful nonetheless. And so I have these petals here, which I would like to figure out a way of filling them in a way that is elegant, which I haven't yet figured out. But I've got a lot of book references open on my laptop that I'm going to trawl through and see if there's one that can teach me how to make pretty petals that are filled in. And then we've got a little stamen, guys, you see in the gold there with the kind of nudie top, just to add some, you know, more realistic flower anatomy. I've got a pink bud in the middle here. Is that the bud? Pink nectar zone? What's the name of that? I'm so sorry. And then at the bottom, we've got these legs, which, so first of all, I made one whole wrap to just seal in the base of the flower here. And then we've got these freestanding legs, which I'm like, many options with these. It could be they could tie at the bottom of your hand here. Jewelry. Sorry, I actually just made like the most extra ring in the entire world ever. That's so funny. But also the legs act as, you can just mold them, and so you could just stand it up, or you could wrap them together like this. We can wrap them together, and then you have more of a traditional looking flower like that, which is great. And so yeah, the leaves the petals you can change the shape of as well. Wait, I'll put a little video of me manipulating the shape of the petals there. And in the meantime, I'm going to put this back on. I'm going to wear this as a ring for the end of this video, which we are at. We've arrived at the end now, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. But I've got an honourable mention before I go, and that will require me to record my screen once more time. And so, welcome back to my screen. This is... These are just two beautiful book covers that I wanted to show you guys before I close off today, because I don't need the contents of the book anymore, but I just didn't want to close the books until I showed everyone the covers of these books, because they are absolutely gorgeous. Look at that the high level of decoration that's gone into this. It's just so stunning. And then one more. Oh my gosh, guys. Okay, let me just put this into some perspective for you. These were made before they had computers. Everything was done by hand. And it blows my mind. And I would just love to travel back into history and see how they achieved pieces like this, because I still have no idea. And I think about it a lot. So yeah, that's that. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Crazy, I know. And in the meantime, lots of love. God bless you and peace be with you. Follow me on Instagram, that's not my name, Kat Sulins, for live updates of the food that I'm baking and the crafts that I'm doing. And so lots of love. In Jesus' name, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.